Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tennis Euphoria, bringing you today my review of the Head 2022 Auxetic Extreme Tour. So the Tour line within the Extreme line is a little bit different to what new purchasers of Extreme rackets might be expecting. Just like the previous iteration, it isn't that sort of utterly brutal spin and power monster that you might expect from an Extreme racket. It actually plays much more like you'd expect maybe a Radical to play. The big difference with this new release is that we have the Auxetic material in the layup. And I think it's fair to say that that was pretty exciting because the previous edition of the Head Extreme Tour was a massive pleasant surprise for a lot of people. Don't think we were expecting to have this type of racket in that line, and I was amongst many who thought it was excellent. In fact, the only knock I had on the racket was really some elements of feel. The sound and response of the racket, all X-Factor stuff, wasn't perfect for me. Generally, in terms of specs and performance, it was great. So the Auxetic 2022, right off the bat, I can tell you that the playing experience is of course quite similar. We have specs that are ultimately exactly the same, 98 square inch head, 305 grams unstrung with the same beam. But what is this Auxetic material? Well, it transpires that Auxetic is a material that leading scientists have been working on, and you'll find it in nuclear power plants as well as other clever places. And it seems that the material adapts to force and impact in different ways to other material, so it uniquely absorbs shock. What that video looks to explain is that arguably the response on this racket is therefore improved. Other sort of things to note: my one-hand backhand nowadays is terrible. I have a slight shoulder impingement, but I think this is a fairly whippy and fast racket still. One-handed backhands work quite well. Mine was 314 on the swing weight, and it came with black head links, which is a kind of okay budget string for me. But just like the previous iteration, I think most will agree that this is a stick that advanced players would consider to be a great platform. So it was probably not surprising to know that the racket really kind of evolved through the few weeks that I had it. That evolution looked like, first of all, restringing, and I went with Head Links Tour, 16 gauge initially. That added to the swing weight a little, as it's a heavier string and a thicker gauge to what it came with, and also added a leather grip just to take the overall weight up a little. In terms of the playing experience, it is broadly similar to the previous. So what you have with the Extreme Tour is actually a very versatile racket, something that can produce a lot of spin. I suppose you'd argue that it sits in the similar category to the Babolat Pure Aero VS, but it doesn't really generate as much spin as that VS does. I would say you get a sort of lower launch angle, better control, I'd argue, but you still get a little bit more bite on the ball thanks to the spin grommets and the design of this racket compared to your all-out control rackets like a Prestige or the Radical line as an example. It's probably quite close to the Head Boom Pro, although I have a sort of X-Factor preference for this racket just in terms of elements of its performance, and I think that's down to its head shape. So the evolution through the tests continued. I actually think this racket performs better with a slightly thinner gauge. So for the first time I actually tried Head Links Touch, 17 gauge, and that was better, I felt, in this racket. That's a new string to me and I actually really liked it. I thought the combination in this racket being complementary to control strings, but with that slightly thinner gauge you get a little bit more bite on the ball and you get better usage of those spin grommets. So you're getting good control, but you also get a nice bit of bite on the ball and you can hit some good angles. The one thing that I would say is different compared to the previous iteration of this racket does come down to that feel, and I suspect that is thanks to the Auxetic material. As I said, my one knock on the previous racket, which is a racket that I could certainly work with and take to tournaments, I rated it very highly, was that without a dampener it would have a bit of a strange pinging sensation, and I just didn't quite like the feel. It always, well, I felt that I could feel the graphene, I suppose, is what I always felt, and I was never particularly a fan of the graphene. I felt that with this Auxetic, there were two main changes to how it felt. The sound on response was better, improved, and that's a minor thing, but it used to just bug me a little, so that's great. I also found though that I thought the racket in stock form was more stable. Now I think many will agree who's played with the Extreme Tour that you know, it is a good platform racket for many, and I ended up taking my previous Extreme Tour up to about a 325 swing weight. You can see how I've done that on previous videos where I was looking to emulate Musetti's setup. That video's on the channel. I actually didn't yet add any weight to this racket, and it apps apart from the leather grip, of course, so I've got no doubt in my mind that this would absolutely be improved, and improved a lot when it comes to plow through and power with that bit of weight. And I would still argue that it does need to be taken up to sort of that 320 to 340 swing weight, depending on your ability. But playing this without the customization, compared to the other, I thought it was better, and I felt it was better in terms of stability ultimately. So I think probably what the Auxetic material has done is it's firmed up the stability, and I wouldn't mind betting that the twist weight on this is better, is improved, is higher than the previous version. So I think it's more playable in stock form. So who should consider this racket? I think if you're somebody who is ultimately looking for a control orientated stick, but is obviously having to compete with the demands of the modern game, and you're looking for just a little bit more pop compared to you know, maybe the Radical Pro or you know, a Prestige, then I think this is a really good option for you. You get a little bit more punch and power compared to those, but it doesn't go all the way to being a power stick at all. If you're after pure spin and pure power, then you're obviously better looking at the Extreme MP or a Pure Aero or a Yonex Zone 100. In terms of advanced players, I still think they should really look at customizing this racket to be a good platform stick to be effective. I think that actually intermediate and advanced club level players will get on better with this now in stock form, although you will notice that the ball will land a little bit short compared to power rackets. I think the other thing that I would note is that I think the racket actually responds the best to more modern technique, which perhaps you know, sort of isn't really a surprise. It actually performs really well when you're just flattening out shots, but I think in terms of day-to-day play, really you can get a lot of benefit and versatility from this if you're hitting with a good amount of spin, perhaps with, you know, semi-western forehands or even western forehands, and then if you do want to occasionally flatten out or hit with a little bit of touch and finesse, then this is a really good option because it does have that versatility, but in just kind of typical baseline exchanges, you're getting obviously the most cut and the most depth from utilizing that technique. On serve, this is quite a typical thing for me reviewing a new racket. Serve will just be off for usually just a couple of sessions, particularly on second serve. I find it just takes me a while to dial that in, so I'll go really careful with second serves and hit them slow and in the middle just to get them in. But what I would say is that you can hit your targets with this really well. I absolutely think that taking that swing weight up to 325 330 is going to massively improve serve in particular on this racket, and as with my review on the previous iterations of this, you're going to get loads more power on your serve and loads more kick on your serve from the MP if you're looking for that in your racket. So that's my summary then. I actually think this is a really good update on what is an already a really good racket line. The Auxetic material seems to be promising. I think it's just sort of reducing that dominant feel of the graphene, which is quite universally unpopular, and I actually think that it's done a really good job. I'm really excited to see what Auxetic will do to any updates to the Radical Pro. Subscribe if you want to see more racket reviews. I was quite interested to see that the Laver Cup edition of the Gravity MP does seem to be including Auxetic material, so I'm trying to get hold of one of them to review. And I've got some other reviews coming up, the new Wilson Ultra V4 100, and I'm also going to take a look at the E-Zone 100, as I haven't done that before. Leaving you here with a really euphoric session. This is a great drill that some of my tennis friends and I do. It's a really good way of getting 6 of you on court feeling like you're getting a great workout. You basically hand feed. If you win 3 points against your opponents, you take a point for the team. The idea is that you quickly feed and try and stitch each other up on the other side. So you're always moving, you've always got to be ready. Great session, one that we're trying to do once a week, just for us all to keep, I suppose, somewhat current in our game now that we're all aging and have got boring jobs, which means we can't go on court as much as we'd like. So I'll leave you with a few minutes of that. It was all good fun. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like to the channel, as that will really help me do some more for you, and speak to you soon.
Oh, no. Is that me? Is that 3? So right, you 2-0 up? Oh no! No! Oh, come on! Oh, first. Hope he goes go. No offense, Ben. Oh, Max. Ball check, I'll get your ball. Right. Drop. It's in. No, just wide. Wide. One more. Don't hit it. Yeah, you feed it, yeah. Yes, one more.